Hello and welcome to the Time Is Now podcast. My name is Jody Albert Moss, and today my guest is Susan Demeter. I've known her for many years, but we've never had the opportunity to connect in person, so this is the first time, and she's very exciting, she's very knowledgeable, and I'm going to turn it over to her now. Susan?
Hi. Thanks so much for inviting me to be a guest, and I'm really am excited to speak with you too. Like you said, we've known each other for years, and now is just the right time to connect. Just to introduce myself a little bit, I'm an author. I have written a book called Cosmic Witch, Magic, Witchcraft, and the Supernatural, which is based in part on my personal experiences with the UFO phenomena, other paranormal things that I have experienced throughout my life, and how it has inspired my life as far as my research goes, and my own spiritual sense. So basically, yeah, I'm a UFO person, a lifer, as I like to call it.
Yeah, and you're one of the ones that's from way back in the day, when and people mentioned it and they knew about it, but it wasn't as, you know, people weren't as involved as they are now. So you're one of the original people. But I'm going to jump into something right away. This cosmic magic and this cosmic witch, what is that about? That
Mm.
interests me a lot.
Okay, well, it is the lifelong sort of shaping of my spiritual sense or my spiritual path, which I relate in my book to my UFO experiences, particularly as a young adult and through my adult life, which I refer to as initiations. So initiations in an occult sense are introductions or levels of knowledge and acquiring knowledge, often very painful, shocking at the very least, which UFOs can be. They shake you out of your normal everyday complacency in consensus reality, and they're like showing you there is something a lot more going on here, that reality is a lot more deeper and richer and complex. So with that, I started moving away from more traditional spiritual paths towards one which is very, very nature-based. I am pagan, I'm an animist. I believe that everything is conscious, that there's consciousness within all of matter, that we are all connected. And this is something as well that if you look at the early contactees, the idea of connectedness, environment, good stewardship towards our planet, our home, um, these are all aspects of UFO experience. So, as a practicing witch, I started realizing and making the connections that yes, my spiritual path really is informed a lot by my UFO experiences, mostly with light phenomena, but I have also seen structured craft over Lake Ontario, in the Pickering area and Ajax area. And all of these experiences to me, they're doors that are opening and awakening my own personal journey. And for others as well who are going through these experiences to let us know that there's a much greater reality than what we normally might experience in our day-to-day lives. So that's kind of what Cosmic Witch is about. My spiritual path as a practicing witch, and my UFO experiences sort of as a combination.
Yeah, that's exciting. And you mentioned Lake Ontario. I have a history with Lake Ontario as well.
I
Way
know you
back,
do.
what, like maybe over 30 years ago. So
Mhm.
this is a hot spot. I know you've traveled. There are areas on the earth that are more accessible, let's say the veil or doorways, or a lot of people like to use the word portal. Um,
Mhm.
there are natural locations, aren't there? And then by people interacting with those locations, they enhance the energy. Is that correct?
I believe so. I think that when you travel to certain areas, you're more likely to experience certain things, or it's easier to interface, if you want to like to use that kind of language, with the other. But I also think this can happen like anywhere if your heart is open to it. But they definitely there are places that are hot spots. Lake Ontario certainly is one. It has a history of all sorts of things. Like from Hugh Cochrane's book, which is out of print sadly now, but it goes into a lot of the experiences very well documented on the lake. I would say that my most profound experiences with the UFO phenomena have involved the Great Lakes, whether it be Lake Ontario or Lake Huron. And I have some ideas around why that might be, at least with water. I think that when I personally go into a meditative state, I find it much easier if I'm surrounded with water or if I'm floating with water. And I think that maybe for the other, uh, the UFO phenomena, we call it that. I know it's more popular to say UAP now, but I'm old, like you said, I'm old school, so I'm UFO. But I think that the water, it allows to transmute, it allows to maybe manifest into our realm much easier. So it's easier to move through the water being conductive. This is just my own opinion or theory, but I do feel that there is a lot of UFO activity that centers around places like water or places where it's easy, like the desert, to get into that meditative state because it's so flat. And it's like when you're meditating, when you're using like, I don't know, like even a scrying mirror or something like that, it's like you're putting yourself into that altered state of consciousness, which is what you get with water or even the desert or places where these things seem to be appearing more.
Yeah, when I was at doing the Lake Ontario stuff years ago, it was like, well, I was seeing orbs, and way before anybody even mentioned an orb, and I would see them manifest. If you looked at the water line, maybe I'm going to use inches, 3 inches above the water, which is probably 100 or 200 feet, they would materialize into this reality, go down into the water, and continue. And I got the distinct impression that water is like a veil to them, like a doorway to them, and they go into another. There's lots of writing about the inner earth and the realms in there. I think they go into other realms that way.
Hmm. Yeah, I think as well. I think that they do occupy our space and time, but they can move between let's put it the worlds. I'll say it that way. Like they can move between worlds or realms. Through water, it makes it easier just like for myself or for other people that meditate and use water or that element that it resonates with them, it's easier for us to go out of body and maybe have these experiences. It's like a conductor. It's like, when you understand electricity and that and the water conducts it, and it's something that it's easier to move through. Like you said, like a veil or a doorway, or even
Yeah.
people use the word portal,
And
that
we're
kind of.
water, we're water as well. So
Mhm.
it's just tuning in. Can you, for
Mhm.
our listeners that don't know, and I know what UFO stands for, but I don't know what UAP stands for. Can you tell us what those mean?
Oh God, well, UFO obviously is unidentified flying object. That goes way back. But I mean, since 2017, where you really start to see an interest because of the New York Times article that came out with Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal, they wrote an article that demonstrated that the US government's different agencies within the military were definitely investigating and interested in this topic. You see this surgence of people becoming very interested. It's becoming more and more mainstream. So with that, they tried to remove the UFO because it has, all sorts of strange connotations to it. I guess to try and make it a little more respectable. So UAP seems to be the current term, which is, I think, unidentified anomalous phenomena or unidentified aerial phenomena. I think it's anomalous phenomena because obviously UFOs aren't always flying. Sometimes they've landed or they're on the ground or underwater. So I think it means unidentified anomalous phenomena. But I tend to use UFO just because when I had my first sighting as a young adult, as a young adult, that's what you called it. It was the UFO. So it's just, I'm just like, why change terms?
Back in the day, it was UFOs and ESP. Remember that?
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah. So you mentioned, if I get this right, like when you were talking about UFOs and experiences you've had, and you referred to them as they could be kind of initiations.
Yes.
Do you believe, or have you thought of this, that maybe we as energies put those
Mhm.
initiations or those experiences into our timeline now so that we would find them at certain stages of our life as a marker for ourselves?
Well, certainly it's possible. I mean, if you consider the fact that we could have like a higher soul or a daemon or, something that's is a consciousness that's outside of that which is existing in our body right now. Sure. And then this thing could be timeless. So we could, at any given point in time, give ourselves these markers to experience these things, put them, because I mean, once it happens, like for some people, they do have an experience and they're able to walk away, but for many of us, you can't. And I can honestly say that it changed the course of my life. If I didn't have the experience in 1990, if it didn't happen the way it did with other witness, um, and so large and so mind-blowingly outside of any, it wasn't like a little blip in the sky kind of light or something where I could, is this a plane? Is this a hell? No, this was a huge, bright red orb, almost octagonal shape that was pulsing outside of my balcony. I was living at the time on a 10th floor condo overlooking Lake Ontario and the Pickering nuclear power plant. And it seemed to be over the power plant.
Yeah,
Okay.
apparently there's a lot of reports in that area around the power plant, eh? Like maybe they're
Yes.
checking in on these reactors or whatever's going on.
Maybe my uncle used to be head of safety at Pickering Nuclear many years ago, and I asked him about it because, of course, in the hydro, I think it's called Hydro One now. They had a magazine called Hydroscopes, and at one time they did cover these experiences of employees who were seeing strange things over the nuclear power plant. Now, and I asked him, I said, did you ever see anything while you were there? And he said, no, but he had seen UFO before, and I didn't know that, but in a different location. So I thought, well, that's really interesting. But he did confirm to me that, yeah, over time, people had, like employees of the power plant, had reported seeing strange things in the skies over the nuclear power plant. So and then I had another sighting in 2001 of a structured craft. There is a video online that is a recreation of that. My friend Finn Hanley made it, which myself and my girlfriend saw what looked like a diamond-shaped UFO. And this was also very close in vicinity to the nuclear power plant, although 11 years later. And in my book, I call it my second initiation because at that point, there was no turning back for me. Like, I mean, I had like after 1990, obviously there was no internet. So what do? You go to the library, you look up UFO books. And I was, after my kids got a little bit older, able to find, I think it was MUFON Ontario or Terra MUFON. There was two different ones at one point. But I wasn't really satisfied with the group. It's not that they were bad group or MUFON's bad as a total, but this particular group I just didn't vibe with. So I kind of struck out on my own. But after a while, I kind of started doubting myself with the first experience. And at that point in my time, I had a second one that was just absolutely when you see something that big, and again with other people, and this is looks like a diamond-shaped spaceship, you can't, you can't suss that in your mind anymore as, oh, I must have made a mistake. So that kind of reoriented all my way of thinking. And then like I say, I'm kind of a UFO lifer now. It's like I can't deny the reality of these things at all for myself or for anyone else.
Yeah, I
So,
don't deny it. I've seen it. I've had some experiences. Some I've talked about, some I haven't. I used to do the group thing. You know my history back in the day, and
yeah.
I got away from it because it just got the message I was getting from whatever I was interacting was that if people aren't serious, don't bring them here. And people
Hmm.
even today are asking me, "Oh, you got to get a group together. You got to take us and show us these spots." But it doesn't resonate now, you know? So
Yeah.
I do my own thing very on my own, and I still have the experiences.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I do too. The experiences for me have changed over time. They're not as spectacular, say, I don't need multiple witnesses and such, but I do have experiences all the time. And to me, like I said, you can get to a point where you don't even have to do anything special. You just have to ask, you know,
That's what I tell people, like,
reach
"Oh,
out.
you got to do this protocol. You got to do this meditation." I've never done that. I just
Yeah.
get an intuitive feeling and I go somewhere or I sit in my basement and I have an experience. And
Yeah.
I think that's the whole thing with all this spiritual whatever is you really don't have to do a lot. Be
No.
open-minded, positive, and clear.
Exactly. And you have to do what feels right to you too. And that's the same. Like, I mean, these protocols do work. I do have a funny story with the Stephen Greer protocols because I was practicing at one point and it was before I moved here. So this was about 2014, 2015, somewhere around there. I decided, okay, I'm going to do these protocols and I'm going to set these things up and I'm going up to Lake Huron to a cottage at this point. So I've been setting this up for 3 months that I'm going to do these protocols and I'm going to set this up to have an experience on Lake Huron. And I had this all planned out in my mind. And we get up there, me and my sister and my niece, and it's really stormy out. And I have all the camera equipment, all these things that I was planning to have set up for my protocols. Uh, all in the car, but we decided we'd take this walk along Sable Beach before we head up and before the storm kind of rolls in. So everything's in the car, we're walking along, bam, there's this strange light. And my sister's like, what is that? Is that a plane? And my niece is looking in that and we're looking at it and it started to spin like a top, the light, and then out of the light appeared what looked like your classical flying saucer. Just very briefly, very briefly, very briefly, and then it was gone. And everything, the I managed to get a picture of what looks like a speck of light with my cell phone because that's all I had was my mobile phone with me. Everything else was in the car, and that was it. And it was so cheeky and so funny. And I thought, of course, this is how it's going to happen. Exactly. It's happened, but not how I planned for it to happen. So I find the phenomena has a sense of humor. And so the rest of the week, I didn't even bother with the protocols anymore. That was my experience and it was cheeky and funny and and I just enjoyed the rest of the time up there without even thinking about it. So it's kind of funny, like for me, I find the phenomena has a sense of humor. It has that trickstery kind of, like, oh, okay, so you think you're going to get a really good picture if you do all these protocols and sit there. Well, you know what, you're here, bam, bye. Kind of like that. So this is my experience that I tend to have with it. But I find that if you approach things with an open heart and you know and you just invite, if can we as if you would invite a person over for a cup of tea or as you would treat another person, then this is how you're going to establish a friendship and a connection much more than trying to do because I can't remember this protocol and that protocol and this and it's not my personality. So
That's the same with me. It's too structured for me. And
yeah,
again, yeah, you build a relationship. They're reaching out to us and we're reaching out to them. And the ones that can sense those signals and work with that, you do. You end up building a lifetime relationship.
yes. And
Well,
that's how it works for me too.
a few years ago, we've been living in this place now, I think, for 12 years, and it was probably in the beginning. I had an idea. I wanted to see who I wanted to invite to my house here. So I think you might remember this.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
yeah.
made some coordinates, like for the people who know about remote viewing, and we can talk
Hmm.
about that, or shamanic journeying, whatever you want to call. But I made
Hmm.
coordinates where I just picked random numbers, but with those random numbers, I had attached something energetically, and I wanted to know who could describe what they saw from those numbers. A lot of people
Hmm.
tried. A lot of people tried. There was one person that came in over 95% accurate, and that was you. Nobody else was even close. You described this property to a T. Want to talk about that? And I don't care what terms you use, but the ability to project your consciousness or your awareness.
Yeah, this is something I've been trying to do pretty much since I was a child with mixed results, and that is to bilocate. I didn't know the term as a child, but now I do, and that is to be in one place or two places at the same time. I view it almost as a, because of my witchcraft, I view it as a shamanic trip, but it can be remote viewing. I think remote viewing is the same thing. It just has different kind of protocols or different, methodology to get there. But yeah, this is something I do consciously or willingly. I have done it as well, spontaneously. I can do that if I get into a truly deep kind of trance state. I can just end up anywhere, but I try to direct it. So,
People have talked about, I've touched on this experience, and I always wonder, a person, an energy, a spirit, can be in multiple locations at the same time all the time.
yes,
And even at some points where, okay, you and I are here talking, part of us could be 7 days ahead of us or 2 weeks ahead of us living, right? Or in the past.
yeah, exactly.
That's a pretty interesting kind of concept, I believe. But
Mhm.
again, the way we were raised, we went to school, we learned certain things, kind of put a shell around us, right? So how do we
Yes.
know what we're really capable of doing?
Exactly. And then there's always like you said, culturally we're conditioned to be afraid of certain things. So we don't try them or we avoid them or you know, and
Yeah.
this also holds us back, right? Is that point of fear. Like I mean some fear is good. You should always be cautious, especially like if you're traveling in other realms, it's like our everyday reality. You can meet really nice people that are really good, and but you can also meet people that have bad agendas or not so nice, or so you have to be careful. But at the same time, I think a lot of people are shut off from it. Because you go through school, like you said, and then you reach adulthood, and then you're rationalizing everything and you're shutting yourself down, you know?
Yeah, I guess we learned how to discern certain things for ourselves because
Hmm.
I've had people say to me that I've talked about some experiences and they said, well, did you do it? Did you go through there? And I said, no. And they said, why? I said, because I was afraid. That was a warning sign for me, right? And I don't
Hmm.
mean afraid in weak or what, but like you just mentioned, afraid as cautious, right?
Yeah,
And you're very correct. Like we got, especially now, the energies are changing, and even in 2025, they're going to change even more. We have to be very cautious of what's around us.
exactly. Exactly. So, and then you have to, you establish these friendships over periods of time and probably lifetimes. And then you have to, when you're meeting new things or experiencing new things, you do have to have that eye of caution because, some things just not necessarily have our best interests at heart. So we just have to be discerning in this reality and in any reality we walk through, right?
Yeah, and forming friendships in this world and in on the other side. You know,
Hmm.
if you do work over there, you do over a lifetime. And I think I don't like past life, future life. I believe there's one timeline. That's what I believe, anyways. But you do
Yeah.
have relationships over there, and if you honor that and respect it, then you're never alone.
Yes, that's true. That's true. So, like, I would say that if people wanted to do this type of work or to journey, it's good to have allies with you, people you or beings, not necessarily humans, but other non-humans that are with you, that are your friends.
Susan, how do people get a hold of you if they're
You can
interested?
get
How do they, go ahead.
There's susandemeter.com, which if you type that in or Susan Demeter into Google, you'll find me through my socials. I've recently started a new website, Paranormal Studies and Intuition. So this is more of an intuitive based look at different paranormal topics, where I write about some of my work from the past in Ontario and Canada and some of my things that I've been doing in Europe. Like recently, I went to Hesdalen, Norway, and people can find me that way as well, or through my social medias. I have tons of social media. So just Susan Demeter, but susandemeter.com is the easiest. And then from there, you can branch out into the socials.
Okay, because I see there's a lot of talk about UFO activity again, and now they're not coming from outer space, they're coming from the ocean or so it's really on the uprise. I don't know what it's about so much, but people are really interested, and it's hard to find, in my opinion, the ones who have been doing this all their life. It's a way of life for them. It's not they didn't just take a weekend course, now they're expert on it.
Yeah. Exactly, exactly. It's like some of us are lifers. We've been doing this for many, 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 many years because it becomes a part of you. And I mean, there are times when I do take a break for my own self, um, and self-care, but that's true of anything I do, like my magical practices and that. Sometimes, you have to ground yourself back into the earth into our consensus reality and live in the day-to-day world, and that's healthy. It's mentally healthy, and it's important that we take care of our mental health if we're going to, especially if we're going to be doing these journeys or pursuing the otherworldly. It's important that we do these things, but to try to walk away from it, no, because the UFOs are part of me, I'm part of them. um, that's how I look at it anyway.
Yeah, I look at it like a pendulum swing, eh? The pendulum
Yeah.
never always stays up, it comes down and I got this lodge I built in the backyard. You know, I bet it's been 2 months since I've been in there. And
Yeah.
it's not that I don't want to. It speaks to me every day, but I don't get that push. And it's like I'm taking a break, exactly like what you said, right? You
Yeah.
have to recharge. You can't be on, well, I know people will say, yes, you can, but I personally, I need to step away and I don't consciously do that. It just happens.
Yeah. Which is good because you're working intuitively. So you know when your body and your mental state and that need to take a rest. And that's perfect. I think you and I work a lot under the same way because I'm like that too. I don't have specific, days of rest. I know and then I do. Right?
Yeah, I think we're
Same.
we're kind of got a lot in common. And then you went and moved away. So I never got to meet you.
But
But
that's okay. You know what? I come back at least once a year. So, you know what? I will be back in 2025 in the summertime. So why don't we just make a plan
yeah, I'd
and get
love for
together?
you to see that what I got. Well, if I'm still here, there's a lot going on. I may have to move out of
Mhm.
here, but it hasn't happened yet. But I
Okay.
have some pretty cool pyramids and things that I'm making, and
Oh, that's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. And
Yeah.
the energies here, like in my first book, there was things I didn't write about, like in the Mount Nemo rattlesnake area, and my experiences on um, New Credit Reservation, Caledonia. I didn't put it in the first book because I didn't know if people would be ready for it, but the second book, I'm going for it.
Yeah, do it. Do it. Absolutely.
Can you talk a bit about your book? Because that book I think is interesting.
Okay. Oh,
Tell us what's in it. Go ahead and show it. And
I'm gonna show it to you. There
yeah,
it
yeah,
is.
yeah.
So there's the Cosmic Witch. And it talks about my own personal journey as a witch, combined with my UFO experiences and how I feel that my UFO experiences informed the witchcraft. But it also gives a basic idea of what modern witchcraft is, different types of practices, my own view on what magic is, and how magic actually it's, in my opinion, it's a form of so it's a psychical process, and it's a means of sort of gaming reality towards what our wills and intentions are, right? So I discuss a little bit about that, and then witches in the past, and some witch activism as well. So I talk about some Romanian witches, for instance, who were putting hexing on illegal logging, people that were literally ripping down a forest that was supposed to be protected, and the government was looking the other way. So these witches stepped in magically and as a form of activism to protect the forest because, our nature, we need to be good stewards on this planet. I think that's part of what the UFOs are saying to us. Like I said, a lot of the like early contactees and people having these experiences were being told, look, you have to start looking after your home. You have to look after the environment, or these very bad things will start to happen. And honestly, these bad things, a lot of them are happening now. And I think it's important. And I think it's also no coincidence that we see a lot of young people now coming forward and identifying with the archetype of the witch and feeling a need to protect the space that we live in. Um, and so I discuss that as well too, is magical activism for the environment, which I also connect, like I said, to the UFOs. So it's quite, so far it's got a lot of good feedback on it. And I will be writing a second book soon, which will be a more detailed look at how I personally interact with the UFO phenomena and what has worked for me for people that may want to seek it out. Like I said, to me, I'm at a point now where I'm making friends. So it's just a matter of me opening myself up to it. But through the years, I have done different experiments and they've worked in different ways. So that'll be the point of the second book, which I think will be entitled like my website, Out of My Mind's Eye. So what I'm imagining, I'm creating. So, if that makes
Oh,
sense.
it makes a lot of sense. And I'm kind of in the same spot. And I'm just going to go for it in the second book. I don't know. We don't even have the names for it or the words for it to put it into print. A lot gets lost when we have to do that because everything's happening out here, right? And
Yes.
like I looked into witchcraft and stuff when I was younger, and then I just said, this is just a complete human being. This is what we do.
Yes.
I call it mind energy alchemy because it's all the same basically.
It is. It's
It's
these
really interesting.
terms.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are just terms for the same thing. And like, and but once you really get into it and from my perspective as an animist pagan, and you start realizing that everything has soul or spirit, you start interfacing with the spirit of the plant life, and other non-human intelligences that are all around us, the fungi, the trees, the birds, the animals, even the rocks, then you start realizing, that to communicate, or to have these experiences with the other realm, it is also you're having these experiences in our realm that we're in as well, right? There's so much that's out there and that we can learn from,
And they
you
say
know.
we can only evolve, like I'll say spiritually, so far. Say 25%. You can only get 25% on your own. You want to get the other 75%, you got to be in nature. The
Yes,
plants, the rocks, it works on our DNA, our energy. It helps to us to ascend.
yes.
And I was so frustrated over the years because I just want to help people, teach them, da 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 da. So I went out the back in the trees behind the house
Mhm.
here, and I was sitting there and I was all depressed. And then, right as clear, you're not here for people. What? I'm not here for people. I'm here for the planet. I'm here
Yeah.
for the rocks. I'm here for the trees. They're just as important as people. I think conditioning in life makes us think, well, we got to heal people. We got to help people. I'm here if someone comes, but it's
Yeah.
the planet is my priority
Yeah.
and the trees. And I hear the trees. They talk to me. The ones out back were talking to me. And I'm going up north tomorrow, and the big old cottonwoods are calling me already.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That is really beautiful. Yeah.
So it's pretty exciting. So
Yeah.
what's
Yeah.
going
Very.
on? Have you noticed a difference? Because you're Canadian from Canada originally, and you moved a long ways away. I don't. Can I say the other side of the planet? Can we say it's like kind of round? You went over it, or I don't know what we say anymore.
I
But
kind of,
you're in another country. Are the energies different? Is the UFO activity different?
the UFO activity is similar. Okay. But the nature and the spirits of the nature and the land here, it's more settled. I think that the nature here, because there's been so much, um, I mean, geographically, there's just not as much space here as, say, in Canada. Where in Canada, I've gone places in the forest and you can feel a different kind of an energetic feeling towards human encroachment that is not always friendly. And I don't blame it for you have to establish that. You have to establish yourself. Whereas here, I think because you've had so much civilization, the land and the people here, at least where I am, are more, I think, more settled with each other, if that makes sense. It was a lot easier in some ways for me to connect with the nature here. I live on a mountain. I regularly make offerings to the mountain. Um, and I found it a little bit easier to connect with the nature here. And I don't know why, perhaps that is, but I suspect it's because it's a lot, like there's nothing here that hasn't been settled on by humans or humans that have been venerating the land in their own ways for longer periods of time. Where, like, even in Canada, where you have Indigenous people, there's still large tracts of land that really are still very, very much wild and free of humans and human encroachment. So
Yeah, the
it's
energies
different.
the energies are interesting, and they're finding out a lot more about Canada and Ontario, specifically the North Shore of Lake Huron. My parents have a place up there, and that's where I'm going tomorrow, Bruce Mines. It's where the first copper find was in Canada, so there's copper all over the place. So
Hmm.
Lake Huron and Lake Superior, there's like a Stonehenge under the water, like things that people didn't even think were here. The largest medicine wheel in the world is in Alberta, I think. It predates
Hmm.
Stonehenge. So there's lots
Hmm.
here.
Hmm.
And with the energies, like you said, you kind of giving back and doing regular routine ceremony or offerings is very important because you're now interacting with them. And
Hmm.
back in the day, 30 years ago, when we were doing this, I had this little group I was with involved. We were here in Milton
Hmm.
and I was reaching out, and it was close to where Mount Nemo was. It was between Mount Nemo and Rattlesnake, and it was night, and we were looking out over, and I saw these beings. I called them ink beings because they were like 15 feet tall, and they would like, you know how when you put food coloring in water, they look like that, and
Yeah.
they were moving. And they
Yeah.
specifically told me, don't reach out, leave. You're not wanted here, the time
Hmm.
isn't right. And I left. I wasn't going
Of
to question
course.
it, eh? So yeah, I've had those warnings, and you have to respect them, I think, because you could, who knows what could open up, right?
Yeah, exactly. Whereas like here, I mean, there have been places as well, and obviously, and I went to Norway, and there was one spot where I kind of knew that whatever was residing there just didn't want to be pestered or bothered. But in general, in Canada, where you have a lot of the old growth, okay, forest that has been undisturbed in nature. here in Europe, you don't really have that because a lot of like even where I live, like all the trees and that they're relatively young because of the Second World War, because there was just so much destruction of the land here that everything had to be replanted and regrown. And so it's all newer growth and it you don't have that same ancient, like when I traveled to California specifically to see a tree called General Sherman up in the Sequoias. It's at Sierra Madre. Um, it's breathtaking to be with a being that's 3,000 years of age. It's incredible. And so, like I said, in North America, you can still find a lot of that, where in Europe you really can't, you know? So
Yeah,
it's a different vibration between human and nature, I think, in some
yeah.
way.
And for me, primarily I connected with stone, with rocks, with the Canadian Shield, and I became familiar with it having a consciousness. It's hard to say what it is, but it's different and it does communicate. So that was
Mm-hmm.
my main stay, and that's what that's my default that I go to. Trees I do talk to them, but I don't
Hmm.
find them as ancient as the rocks are around here.
Well, yeah, the rocks are really
Yeah,
ancient.
yeah.
So I do plan to visit a volcano soon. I've never been to the volcano
An
before.
active one?
Yeah, we have three in Italy. Not
Wow.
close to where I live, but I do plan to visit the volcano and try to connect with the spirits of the volcano, which I think should be very interesting. For me, I connect most easily again with water. So, like any body of water, whether it be the lakes or streams that, you know,
Yeah.
run through, we have.
Volcanoes are interesting though. I've never really given them a lot of thought, but I'm attracted to like molten stone lava movement, creation. I like fire. I'm very fascinated by fire.
Yeah.
That's
So
interesting.
the
I didn't know there was volcanoes in Italy.
Yeah, yeah, we
I've
have.
seen on your post some videos about what do you call those? You know, astronomy. Those places you go to look at the stars. What are they called? It's
Like an observatory, you
Yeah,
mean, or like a dark?
observatories. Yeah, I saw.
Yeah.
Was that in
Yeah,
Norway
yeah.
that you posted that?
No, no, that was here in Italy. Yeah, those these are like observatories for stars and radio astronomy as well, where they're listening for sounds. Um, yeah, there's that. In Norway, we went for the Hessdalen phenomena, which is a hot spot for them that has had like all sorts of light phenomena, but also humanoids have been reported there, structured UFOs like the triangles and saucer shapes and things. And so this has been ongoing for at least since the early 1980s. Ellen Hynek from Blue Book had gone to Hessdalen. So it was exciting for us to go and experience, and we did experience briefly some of the light phenomena. It was a bit distracting though, because there was some television crews there. There was a conference that was
Hmm.
happening. And so, but the lights did make an appearance even briefly. So it was beautiful because it's up on the tundra. So
Yeah, I saw the
again, a
pictures.
different type of nature.
Yeah, a resurgence here in Ontario is you can call them Sasquatch, Bigfoot, Yeti, whatever you want, but
Mhm.
there's more sightings happening now. So I think there's something on the horizon that's going to happen, and it's all going to come out.
I think so. I think so. I think that things are kind of heating up as well. I kind of feel that vibe that there's, in the disturbance in the force, so to speak.
Yeah, the force.
Yeah.
Susan,
So,
what was there anything you want to share with the listeners? Because we're getting it off our.
I have made from my research standpoint, I have made high strangeness actually the focal point. I think that that is the one of the keys to really understanding the UFO experience is the high strange aspect. I wrote a chapter for a book called Deep Weird by Dr. Jack Hunter, in which I explain the importance, in my opinion, to the very strange aspects that sometimes mainstream UFO researchers will try to push aside as too strange, like it's pushed their boggle factor. But I'm very open to that. So if somebody needs a safe space of non-judgment and they want to share their UFO experiences that may get into some very strange things, meeting with humanoids that, or things that happen that may not seem normal, like for you, like, I mean, there's UFO experiences, but then there's the highly strange ones. And by that, I mean meeting the pilots of the UFOs, having strange experiences with them. I'm interested in that and I'm non-judgmental. I've heard a lot of different things, and I think if I can have these experiences, why can't someone else? So if somebody wants to reach out to me, you can through my website. My email's up there, in total confidentiality. If you'd like, I'm always happy to meet other experiencers.
Okay, wonderful. I have an experience maybe I'll share with you someday, but I had
Okay.
it before I came here in this life. So,
Okay.
anyways, I want to thank everyone for listening with us, sharing their time. This has been the Time Is Now podcast, and everyone have a fantastic day, and we look forward to sharing with you again. Bye.
Ciao.